All right, today we're diving into something a little different, a kind of clinical case study framed as a dark fable for the modern soul. It's called The Stargazer and the Logic of Zero. Let's get into it.
So, our story begins in this city, just buzzing with neon light. And the people who live here, the source calls them stargazers. They're trapped in this gorgeous, gilded cage they built for themselves, a prison made out of performative virtue and hollow rituals. They've built what they think is this fortress, an abbey of safety, but really, it's just this incredibly elaborate defense against the terrifying, raw truth of their own existence. So let's start the diagnosis. In this first section, we're going to look at this gilded cage not as some kind of lifestyle choice, but as a spiritual pathology, a sickness that you really have to understand before you can even think about an intervention. At the heart of it all is what's defined as the architecture of stagnation. Think of it as the ego's absolute masterpiece of self-deception. It's this fortress of social identity. Your job title, your online persona, all your public virtues, all of it is meticulously built to hide a deep, rotting interior from the vast, grand silence of the void. So what does this sickness actually look like? Well, the symptoms are everywhere, but they're subtle. You've got performative rituals, things you do just for show, not because they mean anything. That leads to a hollow performance, a life that looks great on the outside but feels totally empty. This creates what's called the Pharisees paradox. The more corrupt you feel inside, the more virtue you project on the outside. And it's all held together with polite lies, illusions of wax fruit, and a kind of mechanical grace. Just going through the motions of a good life without any soul. And the result of all this, the text calls it a fever of the soul. It's this constant, agonizing tension on the inside. Your ego is just working overtime, desperately trying to keep its fragile, separate identity from crumbling under the weight of the messy, chaotic truth of who you really are. It is a profound and totally self-inflicted spiritual crisis. But a state of stagnation like this, it can't last. An external force eventually arrives to deliver a judgment. This is the intervention. And its instrument? The ebony clock. The source material gives this intervention a name, the Red Spectre. And it's not some warrior here for a fight. It's a clinical observer, a high judge of the void, arriving to pass total judgment on this failed, stagnant consciousness. Its only purpose is to force a confrontation with reality. Now this judge, it doesn't show up with a sword. Its weapon is a clock. The ebony clock tower is the perfect tool for this job because it's designed to weaponize mortality itself. It introduces the one absolute truth that the gilded cage can't possibly keep out. Your time is running out. And then you get the critical moment. The clock strikes the 13th hour. This is that symbolic instant that just shatters the illusion of normality, of permanence. It's a signal that the safe, predictable rules you've been living by inside that cage, they no longer apply. So how does this clock actually work? It applies a relentless external pressure. The ticking isn't just a sound, it's a force that methodically strips away all the ego's comforting illusions, that salve of polite lies. It makes the cozy, homely comforts at the cage feel suddenly terrifyingly unhomely. The fortress has become the prison. And, finally, the gavel falls. And this isn't a judgment based on opinion. No, this gavel is forged from the cold, industrial weight of the truth. The result is what's called a fire of dismantlement, a complete and total shattering of that architecture of stagnation. The ego's defenses are just incinerated. So with the ego's fortress in ruins, something that was buried deep, deep down is finally revealed. And this is the revelation of the logic of zero. Stripped of its facade, the self finally meets the honest guest. This is the primal, nameless force of the id, the uncanny double. The Duke of the Abyss that has, in reality, been wearing your face all along. It's that raw, unfiltered consciousness that the ego worked so desperately to keep suppressed. And the contrast here is just, it's stark. The ego's mask, it offered a gilded cage. The honest guest reveals a raw, honest vacuum. The mask was built on polite lies. The guest brings what's called ignoble knowledge. Outward virtue gives way to a primal, nameless force. And that whole stagnant order the ego built, its entire purpose was to fight against the natural pull toward universal equilibrium. And this newly revealed force, it offers a solution. It calls it the logic of zero. It's presented as a kind of therapeutic cure for that fever of identity. This is Thanatos, the death drive, but not as some morbid impulse. Think of it as a deep, unconscious desire to return to the profound peace of a non-living, inanimate state. And you can see how seductive this logic is, right? It isn't framed as destruction, but as a beautiful release, a magnificent, inverted descent back into the quiet, peaceful balance of the deep, a final end to all the striving, all the tension, all the pain. So, all of this has been leading to one final, unavoidable moment. This is the climax of the clinical trial, the presentation of what the texts call the Crimson Gift, a final crucible for the soul. Stripped of every illusion, with the truth of the ego and the id laid bare, the stargazer now has to make a fundamental choice. Will it be dissolution into the void, or the fight for sovereignty? Let's really break down these two paths. On one side, you have the logic of zero. It offers the cold, therapeutic cure of the abyss, a restoration of the deep, the profound peace of non-being. It's a return to the grand silence. But then there's the other side, the logic of one. This is a Nietzschean metamorphosis, a painful but powerful transformation. It's the agonizing, fiery path to a sovereign consciousness, choosing to endure suffering in order to embrace the vital lightning of an authentic life that you create yourself. And here's the key. This isn't a passive choice. The subject has to actively say yes to one of these logics. And when they do, they have to fully acknowledge their original catastrophe, the unfiltered truth of their existence, with all its pain, its failures, and its ignoble knowledge. There is absolutely no more hiding. I mean, the stakes could not possibly be higher. You either emerge from the ruins of your old self as a sovereign of the soil, someone who builds a new, authentic identity from the raw truth of their own being, or you accept the other offer, a final, merciful erasure, a quiet return to the void. And so the observation ends, but not with an answer. It ends by turning that diagnostic lens right back around. After dismantling the fortress of the self and revealing the forces at play, which of these two logics is wearing your face?